Okay, so now we've looked at an example of someone who became an ISA millionaire, or even the very first ISA millionaire in the UK. And I think recently in the Telegraph there was a question, an interview of a lady. She invested for 40 years, and at the end of it, just recently, she also had about 1.2 million pounds in her ISA portfolio over 40 years. You might think about that, that's a long time, but before you know it, if you close your eyes and you open it, it's 5 years already, it's 10 years already. So essentially, the best time to start maybe is 5 years ago. The next best time is today. So I believe as you leave this webinar today, you must begin to do something that will help you, to achieve that goal. Whatever that goal is, for some people it's 1 million, for some people it's 100,000. Whatever your financial goal is, you must begin to take action to hit that goal. So, how to maximize your investing. The first thing you need to note, like I gave you an example of Warren Buffett, John Lee, is that they started early. So it is very important to start early in order to see the impact of compounding. Now, if you look at this slide, I hope you can all see that slide very carefully, the graph on this slide. And here we have an example of someone who at age 25 started investing. Now, they started investing at age 25 and up until age 65. That's about 40 years. And this individual, if they invested £5,000 on a yearly basis, and assume that £5,000 grows by at an annual rate of 5%. Now, this individual, after 40 years, would have had £639,000 in their investment account. Now, think about it. If the annual limit for your ISA is 20,000, and someone decides to consistently invest £5,000 annually for the next 40 years, it means that that individual, assuming a 5% growth rate, would have about £639,000 in their account. Now, think about it. Lord Lee, from the previous example that I gave you, had an annual return of 21%. Now, consider 21%, the distance between 21% and 5%. But even with 5% over 40 years, for investing 5,000 every year, that an individual can come to have about more than £500,000 in their account. But if you compare this person to another individual who starts at age 35, investing the same 5,000 and having an annual growth of 5%, the person who started 10 years later will have just maybe almost 300,000 short of someone who started 10 years earlier. So they will have about 354,000 in their pot. Now, this is also a substantial amount of money, but if you look at the difference between them, 10 years has almost 250 or 275,000 difference. So that is the effect of compounding. So the earlier you start, the better. And that's something that you can see in terms of the life of Warren Buffett, for example. He started very early. At age 11, that was when he bought his first stock. And consistently investing up until age 30, that was when he became a millionaire. And he became a billionaire at age 55. Now, that's very interesting. For someone to have that knowledge at age 11 and then continued until he became 30, that was when he became a millionaire. And the same thing applicable to Lord Lee, the first ISA millionaire in the UK. He started as a teenager. He invested in a company, even though the company, according to his interview, went bust. He learned some lesson, but then he carried on again. You would not say because something has gone wrong or is up and down, you are discouraged. No, you have to keep going, consistently putting the effort in, because at the end of the day, you know that it will pay off. So, like Albert Einstein says that if you compounding is one of maybe the 8 wonders of the world. That is, it's a powerful force. It comes together at the end of it. And if you look at the example that I have on the screen here about someone who started at age 25. Now, if the annual rate of return for this person who started at age 25 were to be 7% instead of 5%, that person after 40 years will have 1.1 million pounds in their portfolio. Just 2% increase in the rate of return has done a lot of lifting for this individual. So you can see that just 1%, 2% increase or difference can make a lot of impact. For someone who started at age 35, for example, their rate of return, 7%, they will have about 540%, 40,000 pounds rather in their return in their portfolio. So the idea here is that start as early as possible. Like I said previously, the best time to start was yesterday, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. The next best time is today. So what can you do today is to take action. Now, like there's a quote that I like from Warren Buffett. He said, someone sitting in the shade today because someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. Think about it. You might want to have a tree, but then you can't plant a tree and it gives you a shade today. No, it's something that has to have been done long ago. But then the fact that it was not done long ago does not stop you from doing it today, because again, the tree that you plant today in 20 years can provide a shade even to yourself or even to somebody else. And as we all know, we are all living longer now, so it's better the earlier we start, the better. Okay, so let's look at the second point. The second point is that you must try to reinvest your dividend. Now, dividend is the money that is paid to the shareholders of a company after, out of the profit of that company. So there are some, for example, type of investment that by law, they need to distribute 90% of their profit to their stakeholder or their shareholders. And that is usually investment trust. So they need to distribute 90% of their profit to their shareholders. So as a shareholder of an investment trust, you are getting 90%, or you are getting a fraction of that 90% into your account. But as an investor, you must strive to reinvest that dividend as it comes in. In some cases, some people will opt to have that dividend paid into their bank account. But if it comes into your bank account, you are spending that money. But the best you can do is to put that money into your investment account, add more to it if it's not enough, and buy more. Over time, you can see the impact of having that, reinvesting your dividend on your portfolio. Now, if you look on the screen, this is an example of someone who invests £5,000 and they choose not to reinvest the dividend. You can see that if they did not reinvest the dividend, for example, over a certain period of time, the difference is substantial compared if they had reinvested the dividend. So as you can see, reinvesting the dividend can be very powerful tool to turbocharge your investment return. So if you sign up for any investment, check, is it a distribution? For example, if you are looking at an index fund, for example, there are different types. Some will be distributing, some are accumulating. So if you are going with the accumulating, it means the dividend is automatically reinvested. But if you go with the distributing, make sure that on your own, you are reinvesting that dividend in order to have a better return. And like I wrote here, dividends are the pennies that produces more pennies that eventually become pounds. So they might be very small. Sometimes for some people, depending on your size of your portfolio, on a monthly basis, you might just get 50p. You can look at the 50p is so small, but think about it. 50p will come together after 6 months to become how many p? Might become £3. That £3, for example, can then buy maybe a fraction of shares that then add more to the dividend you will get in the next month. So essentially, as you get your dividend, make sure that you are reinvesting it such that you can take advantage of the growth that comes from the compounding of the dividend itself. Now, the next point that we want to discuss, again, if you have any question on what we are talking about, please post them in the chat. The next point is that you must try to invest consistently. Now, this what we are saying here is that if you choose to invest maybe £100, for example, on a monthly basis into your ISA, and let's assume that you have 7% annual growth or annual return on your investing, and you do that for 15 years, that £100 that you put in can be as much as 30,000 at the end of 15 years. And out of that 30,000, 18,000 comes from the £100 that you are putting in every month. The remaining 12,000 plus comes from the return on your investment. So you might say, oh, it's just £100, it's not a lot of money, but over time it adds up. And that's where we need to think about it as a long game. It's not something that just happens tomorrow and all of a sudden it becomes that very big. No, it's gradual and gradual and gradual, and over time it makes a lot of impact. And if you look at the chart that I have on the screen here, for the first 5 years or 6 years, you can see that the actual increase in the pot of money that is available is from the contribution. So at first, when you are putting in the money on a monthly basis, it appears that nothing is happening. But if you look at it after the 10 years, you can see the growth that comes as a result of the compounding. So at first, it appears that nothing is happening, but give it time, you can then begin to see that much of the lifting will come from the return of the investment by itself. So if you are investing already, maybe you've been doing it for 5 years and it appears that nothing is happening, stay the course. Okay, keep going, because over time your growth will begin to come from the return of your investment. So if you are not sure, okay, how much do you put in, how much do you get, we have a calculator on Equip Stewards website. If you go on the website, just click on Tools. You see a drop down menu, choose investment return calculator, put the numbers in, play around with it, and see what you will get after 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and see how that will perhaps encourage you to keep going. But also, don't just look at the number, look at the chart. You can see that initially, most of the growth in your portfolio will come from your contribution. But after some time, the growth will then come from the return on your investment. And that is why a long time horizon is very important for investors. Okay, so the next one that we will discuss is in terms of how you invest and where you invest. Now, in the last webinar, we also mentioned the impact of charges on your investing. Now, if someone were to invest in a platform that charges them 1% of fee, on their investment, if you have a £1 million portfolio over 30 years, you would have paid a fee of over 250,000. So one of the things you can do for yourself as an investor is to reduce the fee as much as possible. And that is why there are platforms that will not charge you anything for trading on their platform, whereas there are platforms that you pay transaction fee, you pay different kind of fee, just to have your investment with them. So before you choose a platform, have a good look at what they offer. How much do they charge, and how much will this erode your investment as well? So I think in the next couple of months on our platform as well, we'll try to create a calculator that helps you to see, okay, if you invest 5,000 and you have a fee of 0.1%, how much of that, how much will your fee be after 5 years? Okay, so you can begin to see how much just a fractional increase in fee can cause your investment to erode as much as possible. So if you have a platform at the moment and their fee is increased or they're charging you a lot of fee, begin to think of how to move your investment to a different fee, a platform where there is a lower fee. Of course, like we discussed last month, there is a trade-off between fee and performance of your investment. So always make sure that you are making an informed decision after looking at all the different angles to that investment decision. Okay. And just to another quick one, if you have a question or something is coming to your mind, do post that in the chat. I haven't seen any question in the chat, so do post that in the chat. And one of the reasons why we have this webinar is not just for me to do the talking, it's also for you to be able to ask questions. And don't wait to the last minute before you ask questions. So as it's coming to your mind, begin to note them down and begin to ask them in the chat. Okay, so the next thing we will talk about is the importance of you investing in a tax-free wrapper. Now, the tax-free wrappers here are your ISAs and your pensions. Now, the reason why it is very important to invest in an ISA compared to a general investment account is because if you invest in an ISA, it means that the whatever you have in the ISA grows tax-free. So if you put 20,000 in and your 20,000 then becomes 50,000, it means that you are not paying any tax on that 50,000 because the money you put in has already been taxed. So it means whatever increase you get becomes tax-free within an ISA. And that's a very strong benefit because, for example, for someone who has £1 million in their ISA, it means that they can decide to take out £1 million today, and the government will not say, why are you taking out £1 million? Where is our own share? No, they won't say that because the money is in a tax-free wrapper. Now, your pension is also very similar. Most times when you put money in your pension, you put in before tax if you are doing a salary sacrifice scheme, and the money that you put into the pension, for example, your personal investment pension, will also get a tax relief. And it means that it can grow tax-free, but by the time you are taking out the money, there might be some tax to pay. So, of course, now it's not something to worry about. Put as much as possible in. I think for many people in the UK, the maximum you can put in the pension is 60,000 or per year maximum, and you have 20,000 in your ISA maximum. So it means that you can put £80,000 in a year into tax-free wrapper, and they will continue to grow tax-free without any tax due immediately. Now, I said immediately because your pension, depending on how much the pot is, depending on your personal your financial situation at retirement, you might then need to pay tax on it. But think about it. If you pay tax on the money now without putting them in the pension, that is it. But if you put the money in the pension, you get a tax relief. It grows tax-free, so you have more money growing tax-free. It means whatever you are even being taxed on, or whatever the amount of tax you are paying, is only a fraction of the tax-free growth that you have had over 30 years, over 40 years. So, very importantly for everyone on this call, do not opt out of your pension. Your pension also might include payment from your employers into your pension account. If you opt out of the pension, it simply means that you are leaving money on the table for your employer to enjoy. So if you have an employer, do well to put money into the pension and let your employer also put money into the pension. Okay.